Hi everybody, welcome back. Yeah, tonight we're doing another training session, something a little bit different. We've seen a lot of nice opportunities for moonrise, moonset, sunrise, sunset photography, especially with city landscape sort of or cityscape backgrounds. And because of that, I thought looking at the PhotoPills app would be quite interesting. So this is a really nice app for planning photo shoots. So you could pick dates in future and plan where you want to be and see what the sun and the moon will be doing on those days. And it's got all sorts of other tools. We'll look at a couple of these very handy tools that's built into the app. We'll get started in a couple of seconds. There's still people joining. Welcome everybody. Welcome to another training session. Good, as more people join, let's get some admin out of the way again. I'm going to just share those links again for anybody who's new, first time joining us. We've got a couple of links, so places you can join to keep up to date with the training. Very first thing, if you're not part of Joburg Photowalkers, you should be. It's definitely worth joining Joburg Photowalkers. There's a meetup group, which you can join, and all the events will be scheduled there. So I'm going to copy the link to the meetup group in the chat right now. So you can follow this link to join the Joburg Photowalkers meetup group. Any photo walks should be scheduled there. Then we've got a WhatsApp group for this training specifically. If you've got any technical questions, any editing questions, any camera related questions, you're welcome to ask it in this WhatsApp group. So this is the WhatsApp group. I've just shared it in the chat as well. If you're new, that's a good place to join. Then there's a mailing list if you want to get a weekly reminder and the link to this live YouTube training every week. Then you can join this mailing list, the MailChimp mailing list, and you'll just get an email once a week with a link to this training and just telling you what it's about. So if you need that reminder, then just join this MailChimp list. Good. We're just about to start. Give it a couple of seconds for anybody else to join. Great. If you're joining us, you can say hello in the chat if you want. Also, any questions that you have as we carry on with this app. Some of the tools can be a bit technical and tricky to understand that we're going to be using inside of PhotoPills. So anytime you've got a question, just ask it in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on the live chat so we can get those questions answered. Hi Colette, thanks for joining. Good. I see more people coming in, and we'll just about start. So just as some background, there's hi Mark, thanks for joining. So we've got a couple of different apps that will help you with planning your photos, looking at sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, all these things. Some of these apps will also tell you blue hour, golden hour, all these things for different days. So you can plan your photo shoots quite nicely with them. I think from all the apps I've tried, PhotoPills has got the most tools, and for me is the most useful one of all of them. But there are a couple of other ones that you might want to have a look at. But my suggestion is, if you really want to take control of planning your photo shoots, PhotoPills is definitely one to look at, and a really good app. So I'll show you some of the tools that's built in. And just before we start, PhotoPills is available on iOS, so on Apple devices, and it's also available on Android devices, all mobile devices. So whether you've got a tablet, iPad, a phone, whatever you've got, PhotoPills will work there. I'm going to show you PhotoPills on my iPad, but every single feature that's in the iPad version you will also find in the Android version, and also you'll find it on the iPhone version. Sometimes you'll just have multiple pages showing the same thing, where on the iPad version, it might just show everything on one page because there's a bit more screen space. So if we're doing different tools, and you see I've got a couple of tools open at any stage, and you want to follow along on your phone, you might just need to swipe to the next page. There's little dots at the bottom, and you can just swipe across to get more tools. Okay. I think that covers it. If you're watching this video after the fact, you're welcome to pause, open up your PhotoPills app, and follow along. Press the buttons and see what they do as we plan our photo shoot. It's a nice exercise. It's a little bit of a technical app, but once you get the hang of it, once you've used it a few times, it's actually very, very useful. Okay. It's nice to be able to sit on the couch in the house and plan your photo shoots ahead of time. And when you get there, you know exactly what you need to be doing. So let's get started with PhotoPills. And I'm going to open up my iPad here so you can see what it looks like. So there we go. Okay, this is the PhotoPills app. Couple of things to notice here. Right at the top, we've got 3 main headings, 3 different sections for PhotoPills. On the left, we've got a section that says My Stuff, so I can go to My Stuff. These are a couple of things that places where I can load things, I can back up all my plans, and yeah, it's a useful little place where you can save things into. It's also where you'll find the PhotoPills settings, which is the first thing we're going to look at. There's a couple of things. If you install it for the first time, you just might want to change a couple of settings. So let's quickly have a look at the settings. Right here under settings, units, you want to be in metric. Obviously in South Africa, we're using meters, kilometers, things like that. So you don't want to be in imperial in South Africa. That's always useful. You can synchronize your data, so this does a cloud backup if you're on iOS. So there's a similar thing on Android, which means when I'm switching between my iPad and my iPhone, all my planning and locations and things will be synced between the devices, so I can access the same plan on different devices. A plan is just a plan for a specific photo shoot. It's usually connected to a place and a date. Okay. What else have we got here? We've got apertures, so you can decide if you're going half stops, third of stops, or full stops. Generally, you can set your camera as well to do either full stops when you're setting aperture, thirds of stops, or half of stops. So you can just get that setting to be the same as your camera. So as you adjust aperture when you're doing some of these plans, you'd be able to then replicate it on your actual camera settings. So that's useful. I'm going for third of stops. Then you can select a camera. So right here, you can pick whatever camera you've got. And this makes a difference when it comes to planning, because it will calculate in your sensor size. So when you fit a specific lens to a specific camera in the app and you plan your shoot, this will then your field of view and your depth of field and all these things will be calculated based on that sensor that's in that specific camera. So that's quite useful. So you can also compare things like full frame cameras to micro four thirds or APS-C crop sensors. And so this is just where you select your own camera that will be used for all the planning. Okay. Map type. Right now I'm set to Google Satellite. So I've got a satellite view, but you can choose different maps if you want to have a different map view. Then your elevation and coordinate systems, these are our different GPS sort of systems that you can use. We'll just leave them at the default. I'm not going to change any of these. Going down, all of these will be fine in default. The one that you might want to have a look at, especially if you're using your phone, then your device usage height could influence how accurate the app is. So you'll see a little bit later, I'll show you, it's got an augmented reality view. So you could be standing in a spot, you could use your phone camera, and then it overlays where the sun and the moon and stars and things will be. So you can get an idea of where the sunset would be maybe in a few hours from now. And using that view, the height of what you're putting the device at is going to make a difference. Okay. So what you want to do there is your normal height when you're holding your cell phone in front of you. That's what you want to put in there. So I'm about 176 tall. So generally the height I'm holding my device is 1.65. Okay. Now we've got the first question. Do you do the settings as per your phone or as per your other camera? So you want to select, and the nice thing is PhotoPills have got phones in there as well as cameras. So I could select an iPhone, whatever I've got as my camera, which is quite nice, and it will do my planning then based on my iPhone, but then I'll be using my iPhone to take the pictures with. So it will be based on the field of view of my iPhone, the depth of field of my iPhone. So all my planning would be based around the iPhone camera and not my actual mirrorless camera that I normally use. So I might have multiple cameras and a cell phone camera. Whichever camera I'm going to be using on the day when I'm doing the shoot, the camera and lens, that's what I want to put in here. You'll see there's a lens section that we'll cover later. But this camera you're selecting here is the one you're going to be using to take the picture with. Okay. So if you're going to be using a mobile phone to take the image, then you can select your mobile phone there. If you're going to be using whatever camera you've got, pick the make and model of your actual camera, and it will calculate everything based on your sensor size. Okay. Hope that makes sense. And that's pretty much the only settings that you need to change. Just getting back to that height. So the height is from the floor to where you're normally holding your device when you're just holding your device in front of you. That's the height. Okay, good. So we can hit the back button here and go back to the My Stuff section. Backups, that's just where you can back up, so it can export a file for a backup. If you've got a new phone, you can export all your settings and everything that you've done previously into a file. You can copy that to your new phone and restore it from there. So you can move all your settings and things between devices. You don't have to start from scratch. Okay. This next section over here is called Points of Interest, which is super handy. And this is where you will find all the points of interest that you've saved. And I'll show you how we can save points of interest. But it's quite a nice section. So if I click on points of interest, it's going to give me a map view, generally the last point of interest that I've saved. And here in the middle at the bottom, you'll see, at the bottom left, we see map. This is the view we're already in. You can see it's yellow there. The next section gives me a list. So if I click on list, these are all the points of interest that I've saved, mostly in and around Johannesburg or places that I've taken photos and just to do some planning with. So we've got things like Constitution Hill, we've got FNB Stadium, we've got Hillbrow Tower, the Leonardo, Northcliffe Eco Park. So there's just a couple of places that I've used to plan photo shoots with. You can also add new points of interest that you can save. So we can go to the little plus button there. We can use our map to position a little pointer and then give it a name and select a category. So a building or a restaurant or whatever it is, and we click save. A better way of doing it is actually using our planner to search for an address or search for a place by name, and we can save it from there. So I'll show you how to do that. But this is just where you will find a list of all your points of interest. Okay. We'll get back to how you load them and how you save them just now in the actual planner as well, which is actually a little bit of an easier thing to do. Then we've got this awards section. So this is quite nice. PhotoPills have got a long running sort of competition where you can enter your images, especially ones that you used PhotoPills to plan the shot for. And then if it's a really nice image, they will put it in this little awards gallery for you. And they generally share it on their own social media as well. So if you open this section, you can get some nice inspiration. You'll see some very pretty pictures, which is what we'll do now. So this is the awards section. So these are some of the images that they think are really nice. Okay. Just looking at some of these images, you can see the sort of things that you can plan with this app. So for instance, if you look at maybe this image of some bridge, and you've got the moon, or yeah, the moon right there in the middle of the bridge, that's the sort of things you can plan. Getting the statue with the moon right next to it, getting a sunrise behind a building. These sort of images are really easy to plan with this app. Okay, here's another nice inspiration one. So it just gives us a section where we can get some nice inspiration for different compositions and things that we can then plan with the app. Okay. Next, we've got a question. You battled with the POI this afternoon. Yes. It can be tricky loading points of interest into the thing and getting them saved. I'll show you exactly how to do that just now. Okay. Then we've got a plan section. So this is if you save any plans, so any photo shoots that you've planned, this is where they go into. They've got a date. You can call it whatever you want. So as you plan different photo shoots, you can save it in there and then go back and recall all the info so you can see what's coming up. You can also set reminders and add them to your calendar so you know on which days you've planned shoots. Okay, because some things, alignments of maybe the moon or the sunrise or whatever with a specific building from another place, they might not happen all the time. It might be a specific time of the year. As we go into winter, where the sunrise is actually shifts on the horizon, and then as it becomes summer again, it shifts back the other way. So maybe you're planning a shoot 4 or 5 months from now when everything aligns perfectly, and you can save that plan and then later on recall it, save it to your calendar, set up a reminder for that shoot as it comes up. So it's a very handy thing to do. This is our My Stuff section. Now we'll see how to actually use the tools. So the next section here at the top, just before we actually go into the tools, I just want to mention Academy. So under the Academy section, they've got some video tutorials, they've got the user guide, they've got some other useful thingies that you can, articles and things that they publish. You can have a look at, and there's some really good training material there if you want to get deep into some of these tools. Okay. Now the pulls, that's the middle section right here. The PhotoPills app, or the developers call it pulls. But basically what pulls, the pulls are actually just tools. So this is the section where we get all our tools for doing different things. Okay. So there's many different photographic tools in here for accomplishing many different tasks. Some of them are very handy. Depends on what sort of photography you do. There are a couple of these tools that are mostly applicable to astrophotography. So if you're interested in astrophotography, star trails, things like that, there's specific tools to calculate those exposures and timings and all sorts of things. But even if you are just let's say a family photographer or something, you might just be interested in checking the golden hour, checking the sunset direction, these sort of things, basic things. That's all covered as well inside of these tools. So some of these tools are very advanced, some of them are more basic, and you can just pick and choose the tools or the pulls, as they call them, that's applicable to what you need to know at that specific stage. Okay. Let's start off with the planner, and we're going to start off with some like less complicated scenarios, just maybe planning an outdoor shoot with somebody, and then we'll move into more complicated planning tools and scenarios where we're trying to align maybe sunrise with a specific building and calculating all sorts of things for that photo shoot. Okay, so let's start off with some of the most basic tools that we've got under the planner. The planner is generally where you would start a lot of your planning for the shoots. But sometimes what I like to do is I would go to either the sun or the moon section before I start my planning, just to get an idea of what's happening with sunrise, sunset times, these sort of things. So let's start off and click on the sun pull here. So it's the sun tool. I'm clicking on the sun tool, and it gives us a nice little overview. And like I said, on a smaller screen like a phone screen, you might have to just swipe sideways to get from a section maybe like this section to the section next to it. Okay, so it might not be all displayed at once. You might have to swipe across to see the rest. Okay, so right now we've got the sun section. It just shows me right here that the sun is not visible right now. So the sun is not in the sky where I can see it. It will be nice and yellow or orange or something there at the top if right now the sun is visible. It gives me the date and time. That's right now, so I can see that. And then in this little section, I can see, let's say, for instance, sunset was 1724, blue hour 1740. Before that, before the sunset, we had golden hour from about 1649. So we can see the golden hour, then golden hour carries on until sunset. Then we've got blue hour, nautical twilight, astronomical twilight. So then it's nighttime after that. So we just get an idea of when we get different qualities of light for a photo shoot. This might be handy to see. And right at the bottom, we've also got a calendar, so we can change the date and time to whatever. The today button is in the corner, so if we click this, it will be today's date and time. But we can also go to a date in the future, pick a different date, and we'll see the sunrise, sunset, golden hour, all these things for that specific date. So if I've got a shoot coming up on the weekend, I can just check my golden hour, blue hour times, sunset times, so I can plan my photo shoot according to that. So this is a nice handy tool. And the Moon tool is very similar, so it gives you pretty much, again, a similar view. So you've got this Moonset, Moonrise, all these things. It will show you the phases coming up, so you can plan maybe a full moon shoot. There's another full moon 2022-07-13 coming up. Today is also full moon, so you can see all these things. It just gives you a nice idea of what's coming and what you could expect, moon or sunwise, and you can move the date around to specific dates. So that's one quick little tool that's pretty handy. Now let's hop into the planner. The planner is where we will plan more advanced shoots when we're looking at direction of light, direction of sunsets, direction of sunrises, moonsets, moonrises, and we'll see now why that's important. So let's go to planner, and this is what our planner looks like. You might have to, if you see these little things, these are blocks and they're stacked on top of each other on the mobile phone version, so you'll have to swipe sideways to get to all the different sections that we've got. On the tablet, it lists all these sections below each other. On the phone, you just swipe sideways to get to different sections. Okay, and then there's a map view. So this is our map view, and this bottom view is the timeline view. Okay, so this is where we are or where we're planning to shoot. This is at what time we're doing it or on what day we're doing it. And these things are all your planning tools for that you can accomplish different things for. And I'll show you now how this works. Before we do anything else, you need to know how to get the map to a specific place. That's the first thing we need to do. So if you are already in the spot you're going to be doing the photo shoot, or you're planning to be shooting from that spot, you can go to this little plus button. You can go to this very first button under that, click that, and it puts the marker right where you are. It uses your mobile device's GPS, and it puts the marker right there. So now you can plan a photo shoot in your current location. What happens if you want to do a photo shoot in a different location? Okay, we can go to the bottom here. You'll see there's I've got a whole menu section right here at the bottom, and I can click load. It's a little bit confusing. Find is not finding a location. You have to go to load a location. Okay, so if you want to move your map to a specific place or a town or a spot in town, you're going to go to load. So we're clicking on load. I can go to one of my saved points of interest. Right here, I can just click on one of my points of interest. So if I want to go do a shoot on the Leonardo, I can click, and now my map will be centered. That pin will be on the Leonardo. As you can see, as I zoom in, I'm just pinching in on my screen. You'll see my pin is now on the Leonardo. Okay, so it's a point of interest that I've previously saved. Okay, I can go back to load. I can also just search for something. So let's say close to me is Loniel. Oops, We should go wrong keyboard. Lonial. There we go. I'm going to just go for Lonial Shopping Center. It's right next to the park that I want. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. What I can do is grab this little red pointer. So this is where everything is based on. I searched for the shopping center, but I'm just going to grab this little pointer and move it over to the park right next door. Okay, so now our photo shoot will be in the park at Lonial. If anybody's been there, there's a little dam. So this section is water. There's the wall, the dam wall. There's a little stream running down here. This is a grassy area. And yeah, it's a nice family-friendly park. So if I wanted to go and do a photo shoot there, I can move this little dot to the roadway there. It's a little pathway. And now my planning will be based on this. So what does this tell me? Just by positioning myself in this spot, I can already see a couple of things. But before I do, I might want to save this spot for future photo shoots. I might want to save it as a point of interest. So we can go to save. Now I can save either, if I go to save here at the bottom, I can either save the plan, which is the plan based on the date, specific things happening, or I can just save the point of interest. So that's where my little red marker is right now. I'm going to do point of interest. I'm going to say it's a new point of interest. I'm going to call it Lonial Park. I'm going to select the category and any category that I think is appropriate. The city park in this case would be appropriate, and I'm just hitting save. So now I've just saved a new point of interest, and in future planning I can then recall this point of interest and go straight to this spot. Okay, that's pretty handy. Now what can we already tell? Let me just close all this out. What can we tell just by looking at this image? We've got a park. You'll see at the bottom it loaded up the date and time of today. If it's not at today, what we can do is just double tap this bottom part where the little where the time is. And what that will do is it will move the date and time to right now. Okay, we can move it to future dates. We can even move it to historical dates if we wanted to see a specific thing. But if you just double tap right here on the time at the bottom, it will take you to the exact time you are right now. You'll see the screen is a little bit bluish and dark, which means we're after sunset. And you'll see this middle line right here is where we are in time. If we go left, there's the daytime. This orange bit is the sunset, and we're going into night. And on this side, we'll get the next day. So we get a 24-hour view on this timeline at the bottom. We can move this timeline around. So if I just take this timeline and I scroll it sideways, we can go back in time. So this was this afternoon. Then we slowly go forward. We'll see the sunset, and then we'll get nighttime. And we can go into tomorrow, so we'll see the sunrise. This is going to be the sunrise tomorrow morning, right there. Okay. Now, if we look at our little map section for tomorrow, you get a moonrise line, which is the one blue line. You get a moonset line, which is the dark one there. You get this line for sunrise, and you get this line for sunset. So if I'm standing tomorrow in this spot at Lonial Dam, I know tomorrow morning my sunrise will be along this line. So I'll be shooting over this grassy field towards these trees, and I'll get the sunrise behind those trees. If I wait until tomorrow evening, my sunset is going to be in this direction. So if I'm standing right here on this dam wall, I'll have a sunset over the water shooting towards the shopping center. So that's going to be the direction of the sunset. So as I drag this timeline around, you'll see now that we get our sunrise. There's a yellow line right over here. That's where the sun is. Okay. So this is tomorrow at 7:45, Wednesday, 7:45. The sun will be in that direction. Okay, as I keep scrolling, you'll see the sun, the line of the sun moving around, and it's moving around. And as we get closer to sunset, now the sun is on this side, and we keep scrolling this timeline at the bottom, and our sunset is right there. Okay, so as golden hour starts, right about there, there we go. As golden hour starts, the sun will be in this direction and then eventually set right there. And we can see our golden hour starting at that point in time. What we can also do is we can double tap on our timeline itself right here. If we double tap on the timeline, it's, sorry, hold. If you hold on the timeline, it scrolls in. So it zooms in on our timeline. And now we've got a very much shorter time, and we can finally adjust. So if we want to check exactly where the sun is at a specific time, we can do fine adjustments on our timeline this way. And then if I just hold again in the middle of that timeline, it's going to zoom out to a 24-hour view again. And I've got adjustments that's a lot faster if I scroll around on my timeline. Okay, that makes sense. Any questions so far on the planner as we've got it now? You can just pop questions in the chat if you need to know, or if you've got any questions at this stage. But that's the basics of the planner. We basically position ourselves on a spot. We can save our points of interest for future use, so we can reuse locations, go back to specific places. We can check on a specific date and time. We can see the direction of the sun, the direction of the sunrise, the direction of the sunset, the moonrise, and the moonset. So this is already very useful. And we'll start getting into some of the finer details of these tools, but just using it like this will already give you some nice opportunities to get nice photos. So now we already know that in this specific position that we are, if we go to this spot tomorrow, sunrise is over there, sunset is over here. So there's no way of getting from this dam wall, there's no way getting a sunrise over the water. So we already know this, which is quite nice if you're going to a location beforehand, knowing which directions you should be shooting at different times of the day. That's quite useful. Okay, so let's carry on, and I'll show you a couple of the tools that you can use on this map. Okay, this little plus button, a lot of the planning tools are actually, and tools to manipulate this map is actually hidden under this plus button, and the settings for the map is under this little thing with the 2 layers. Okay, so we can show more information or less information based on what we select under this tool, and this little plus button is where all the map-based tools are for manipulating our map and putting pointers down and things like that. And I'll show you how all of them work. And this little button next to it, all this does is the last used tool, it will just put there. So if you want to do something multiple times, it just puts the last used tool right there. So whatever I select under this plus one, any of these tools, it will just put the last used one next to it. Yeah, so that's just a useful shortcut. Now, all these tools under the plus button, let me press it again, show you plus button. Now we've got all these tools. The very first one, like I said, that puts your red marker where you are and your GPS position of your phone is. So that just moves you to where you are right now. Okay. This next one just helps us move the map around, and it will place down the red marker wherever I put it. Not amazingly useful, because what you can do is just pick up that marker, hold it, and put it in a different spot if you want to shoot from a different location and see if you can get a better spot for that sunset, for instance. So now we're getting a lot of water for our sunset. If we move to the grassy area over here, you will see that we can't get the sunset over the water. So already this helps us just by moving this little red dot around. So this little tool for moving the map, not the most useful one. You can just drag the red marker. Okay, that's probably a faster way of doing it. Then we've got redo and undo. Not worried about those. You should know them from other programs as well. This one just gives us a full map view. So if we want to hide all the other stuff, we can press that button, and if we press it again, it brings back all our tools. So that's just a zoomed in view that we can get with that one. Okay, that's pretty easy. This one is a handy one, and we'll see why now. We can have two of these little pin markers on our map. So we can have the spot we're standing when we're taking the photo, and we can have another pin which would be our subject. So if we're shooting specifically to a specific place or a building or something, we can put the subject marker on the other building, and we can do some calculations in distance and all sorts of other nice things. So we can then place another marker, it's a black one, also on the map, so we can do some calculations and do some more advanced planning. Okay, so let's start a more advanced one. The other day there was talk about shooting a sunrise close to the Leonardo from Northcliffe Eco Park. Okay, so we're standing on Northcliffe Eco Park, we're looking towards the Leonardo, and we're planning this sunrise shot. And we need to know some information of, is it going to align, what's going to happen, what time should we be there, how close will the sun get to the Leonardo, is it going to be high in the sky, all these sort of things. And we can answer all these questions with PhotoPills even before we go there. And we can also find the ideal date to go there when these things align using PhotoPills. How do we do this? Firstly, I'm going to move my marker to one of the two spots. So either the Leonardo or Northcliffe Eco Park. That's where we want to go. So what do we do? Just before we do, that's that button. I'll show you how it works. This little button, all this one does is if I click it, you see these little dotted lines on the other side. It gives me dotted lines on the other side of the sun. And it will do the same for the moon. If the moon is currently in the sky and there's a blue line for the moon moving around, it will give you a dotted line on the other side. So sometimes you need to align things or move back and forwards, and you can actually use this little dotted line to get a better spot to shoot from based on your planning. So that's what this button does. We'll keep it on because I quite like that little dotted line to plan things with. Okay. Again, that's just your current location. It shows your current location on the map. That shows your current location and which direction you're looking on the map. And that's just your map. So we'll ignore those and we'll start our planning for our Leonardo shoot as a more complicated example of planning with PhotoPills. Okay. So we've got this idea, Northcliffe shooting towards Leonardo, we want the sunrise. In winter, this should be quite a good shot to get with where the sunrise actually aligns with. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to go to load again. Remember, load at the bottom is where we're actually positioning ourselves when we're trying to move the map. We're using load at the bottom, not find, but load. Okay. I'm going to press load. I'm going to go for point of interest because I've previously saved these two places. So we can go to, let's say we go to Leonardo first. So we're going to use the Leonardo as our subject. We're going to have the Leonardo in our shot. And I'm going to start here and drop my black pin, which is my subject pin, on the Leonardo. Okay. How do we do this? You'll see there's a little icon here that's got a red and a black pin on. And it's actually a button. I can press this thing. Now, if you can't see it, you might be looking at maybe this first tool, and you need to just go to the next page to get to this one if it's on a phone with a smaller screen. If you swipe again, you'll get to this one, this one, this one. So all these tools might just be pages underneath each other on a smaller screen. So you just have to go sideways until you see this little screen, this little tool that shows the red and the black pin. Okay. So I'm clicking on this little icon that shows me the red and the black pin, and as soon as I click it, you'll see there's a black pin on the map. So it dropped a little black pin on the map for me. Okay. Which means I've got a subject pin on the map. Sometimes your black pin could be, let me just move it, could be a little way off. It might drop the black pin somewhere in your view. So we've got a red pin and a black pin. The black pin is which way we're facing our subject. That's the black one. The red one is where your camera is. That's where you're standing taking the photo. So what do? We've got our black pin. We've got our red pin. The red is actually on the Leonardo. So I'm going to go to my plus button. I'm going to go to this one. It's just got 2 pins and little swap arrows. So it will just swap those pins around. So you can go move the one to where the other one is. I'm going to click that little button. Now my black pin, my subject is on the Leonardo, and my red pin is just somewhere out on the street. So we've positioned our black pin. We're good. We used our point of interest to do that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move our camera over to Northcliffe Eco, the point of interest. So I'm going to go load again. I'm going to go point of interest. And you might need to do this a few times. Maybe look at the replay of the video and do it a few times to just get your head around how you move around the map and how you set these points of interest. Okay. Where's Northcliffe? Northcliffe. There we go. So I'm going to click on Northcliffe. Now my camera is on Northcliffe. Okay. We can see we're standing on Northcliffe. And if I zoom out a bit, so I'm pinching again. I'm zooming out, I'm zooming out, zooming out, zooming out. And our black pin should be on the Leonardo. So this side we've got Northcliffe. This side, black pin, we're still on the Leonardo. Okay. So what do we know? Looking at this little picture right here, what can we already tell from this? Well, the sunrise, which is this thick yellow line right there, is going to be quite close to our subject. So the sunrise direction is going to be pretty good for shooting towards the Leonardo. This is our sunset direction. This is our sunrise direction. Okay. If I double click again on this bottom timing, we go back to tonight. Right now, that's our time. And if I move this around to tomorrow morning, I'm just scrolling my timeline, and we go to close to our sunrise. You'll see that within a couple of, well, within the first part of the day, we'll get the sun in the same direction as the Leonardo. Okay. If I zoom in on the Leonardo, like this, and I scrub my timeline here in the bottom, I just move it around slightly, you'll see that sunrise right there. And as I scroll my time along, you'll see that the sun will eventually align with the Leonardo. So right now the sun and the Leonardo from where I'm standing is actually perfectly aligned. Okay. And we can read the time at the bottom. So when's the sun going to be exactly above the Leonardo? It's going to be at 11 past 7 tomorrow morning. Okay. 11 minutes past 7, we're going to get the sun right above the Leonardo. Now, we need to know a few other things. Height is one thing. And our tools here will tell us quite a few things. Okay. So if we look at our pins, for instance, the first thing is our 2 pins are 9.6 kilometers apart. So we are 9.6 kilometers away from the Leonardo, where our camera is right now. We can see that the 2 pins, the Leonardo is actually lower, the bottom of the Leonardo, where the floor is, where the ground floor is actually lower than where we are on Northcliffe Copy. So we have to, or Northcliffe Eco Ridge. So we have to keep this in mind, that the horizon is actually a little bit lower than where we are. Okay. And we'll calculate all these things just now. But that we can already tell just by looking at this. The 2 pins, the altitude difference is minus 166 meters. So the bottom of the Leonardo is actually lower than where we are on Northcliffe. Okay. What else can we tell from this? Well, the sun height is at 687 meters. What does that mean? That if we are looking towards the Leonardo, where our black pin is, the apparent height of where the sun is going to be at 687 meters. So we know the Leonardo is roughly 300 meters or something. I think I can Google it, but let's say the Leonardo is, for instance, 300 meters. So this means the sun will be another Leonardo above it. That's where the sun will be. So that sort of height, double the Leonardo height. Okay. How do we plan everything then based on this? Well, we can plan to shoot a little bit earlier. So as the sun goes, if we move the timeline back in this direction, the sun will go lower, and we will see the apparent height of the sun is now only 400 meters. So it will be just higher than the Leonardo, but it will be now in our frame off to the right. So we can get it close to the top of the Leonardo. We just have to move our timeline earlier. So now round about 7 exactly, we're getting the sun to the right and almost at the top of the Leonardo sort of height. And we can scroll a little bit back in time again, and we can move it still lower and get the sun sort of next to the Leonardo at an earlier time. So we're just reading off the sun height over here, and we're comparing it to what we know the height of the Leonardo is. So this gives us a good idea of where can we position the sun. What this tells me is tomorrow morning I can't get the sun behind the Leonardo shooting from Northcliffe. What I can do is I can get it either above or next to it. That's my two real options for a sunrise shoot tomorrow morning from Northcliffe towards Leonardo. Okay. I hope that explains some of this planning. We'll see a little bit more. Right there, we get our sunrise time. So that's tomorrow morning sunrise. We get our sunset time. There's a lot of stuff that we can see on these tools. We get our civil twilight, nautical twilight, astronomical twilight. So that's night. There's our blue hour times, morning, evening. There's our golden hour times, morning, evening. So we know we're shooting in golden hour if we're doing this shot with the sun and the Leonardo. So that's a good time. We're getting nice light as well. And then if we're doing astrophotography, if we're looking for things like the Milky Way, the galactic center, so where the center, if you're doing star trails, where everything spins around, if you're doing night photography, those would be these bottom tools on this side, which we're not going to be using today because we're just planning our Leonardo shoot. But these top ones all give us good information, and we can even go further and plan our shoot in more detail based on what we're seeing here. So I can click on this little layers icon and I get this menu. There's a drone mode. If you're doing drone photography, this means you can actually move your camera up in height into the air, which we're not doing because we are stuck to the I just see a comment, lots of planning and there are clouds. Yes, that happens often. I've had that before. It happens often. So yes, but looking at this menu again, so we can go to drone mode if we want to lift our camera up into the air, but normally camera mode is when we have our camera on the ground level. We can choose our map type again, and then we've got some map tools, which is very, very handy. And then at the bottom, we've got map layers. This says map layers. Right now, sun is turned on, so we're seeing sun information on the map. Moon is turned on. We'll also see moon information at different times of the day. Milky Way and meteor shower I've switched off because we're not planning anything with those two. We can even switch moon off if we don't want to see the moon information and just the sun information because we're doing a sunrise shoot. Okay. Then these map tools will help us plan our actual shot and composition, which is quite nice. We can go, let's say, sun and moon information. If I switch this on and I go back to my map, you'll see there's a new tool right here at the top. It says sun. We can also switch it to moon if we click on it. We can switch it back to sun. We can basically we can get a relative size of the sun to our subject. So you've seen these photos where you get maybe the Leonardo and the sun is bigger, wider than the Leonardo. How do you do that? Basically, it's how far away you are and how much telephoto lens you've got. And you can calculate this and see your field of view and calculate the relative size. So based on where this black pin is, the relative size of the sun I can specify here. So if I know the top of the Leonardo, where the very top of the Leonardo's, well, where the restaurant is, Alto restaurant is. If I know that section is maybe 20 meters wide and I want the sun behind the Leonardo to be bigger than that, I might go in here and I could say I want the sun to look as if it's 25 meters big compared to my Leonardo, wherever this black pin is. What does this tool now tell me? To get the sun to be 25 meters big compared to the top of the Leonardo, I need to be at least 2.7 kilometers away. My 2 pins are 9.6 kilometers away. Okay, so this is quite handy to know. If I zoom out, I'll also see a gray circle. If I'm planning my shoot based on a specific location, let's say I want to shoot Hillbrow Tower with the moon behind it, and I want the moon to be 3 times the size of the top of the Hillbrow Tower. The Hillbrow Tower I know is maybe 5 meters diameter at the top. I want my moon to be 15 meters. I can do this calculation with the moon, and I will get that gray circle, and I know I need to be outside of that gray circle to get the moon at least that size. Further away I get, the bigger the moon will be in relation to my subject, because my subject is stationary. I move further away, which means I need more of a zoom lens, and that brings my sun in relation to my subject. It will make it look bigger. So in short, the more zoom you've got in your lens and the further away you get, the bigger the sun or the moon will appear in the image. So we've all seen these images with the massive moon or the massive sun behind a building or a tree or a person. That's just getting the right amount of distance with an appropriate zoom lens, and you get the sun or the moon to be nice and big. Okay, so I hope that explains it. Anywhere outside of this circle or that gray circle will give us a sun that's compared to the Leonardo looking like it's 25 meters big. So it's looking at that black pin, where the black pin is, from where I'm shooting, and that gives us the apparent size of what the sun will look to be if we're taking our subject size. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let's say we want the sun to be compared to the Leonardo size, or the width of the Leonardo, we want the size to be 30 meters. Then we know we need to be at least 3.3 kilometers. So I've set 30 meters as my size for the sun. We need to be 3.3 kilometers away from the Leonardo to get that apparent size. And you'll see, as we want a larger sun in our frame, as I make this figure larger, that gray circle is just moving out, and I just need to be outside of that gray circle to have at least that size sun. So we need to be more than 5.5 kilometers away from the Leonardo to get a sun that looks to be 50 meters in diameter, compared to whatever our Leonardo size is. So if we know the Leonardo diameter is 10 meters and we want our sun to be bigger than that, and we want it to be 50 meters wide in our shot, then this is how we calculate it. Very handy tool to use. And I'll show you another way how we can visualize our frame as well. We'll get to that. But this is the first little handy tool. Think about, or go and research or Google, if it's a tower like Hillbrow Tower or the Centec Tower in Brixton. Just Google the diameter of the tower and think how large you want the moon in comparison, or the sun in comparison behind it or next to it. And then you do this calculation, and you'll know how far away you need to be to get that shot. So again, the more zoom you've got, the further away you get, the bigger the sun or the moon will appear with the same size subject. The same size Leonardo, we're getting a bigger sun as we move back and zoom in. Okay. Yeah, lots of info. So unfortunately, this is a bit of a technical tool, and it takes a bit of practice getting used to. So It's worth pausing if you're watching afterwards again, pausing, trying it on your phone, doing it with me as we do these things, and doing it a few times. As soon as you've planned a few photo shoots, it will go quick. You could quickly sit somewhere waiting for an appointment or something on your phone and plan a shoot if you've done it a few times. But it is a little intimidating doing it the first time. So that's why a video that you can pause is usually quite useful. Yes. So you'll get a good feel of how to calculate and what you can calculate as you use this tool more and more. Okay. So again, just to get back to that concept, let's just take a person. If I've got a person, let's get back to my camera. If I've got a person standing in front of me and I've got a wide angle lens and I fill them the frame of my camera, the photo, I put their feet on the bottom and I put their head on the top of the frame with a wide angle lens. Okay, I'm getting a lot of background. I can see a lot of the background, these tiny little buildings and things behind it. Now I move back and I take a lens that's got a bit more of a zoom and I fill the person is still in the same spot, but I've moved back and I'm using a zoom lens now. And I put their feet again on the bottom of the frame and the top of the head in the top of the frame. Because I've got a zoom lens now, I'm seeing a smaller angle of the world behind them. Okay, so what's happening is I'm now getting maybe 2 buildings behind them. As I move further back and I zoom in again to get their feet on the bottom and their head on the top, I'm now only seeing the doorway of the building in the background behind them because I'm limiting my field of view and zooming in to get them to be the same size. So my subject in all these photos, the person, is the exact same size in my photo, but the background is changing. I'm seeing less of the background and the background is becoming bigger and closer to my subject in the frame. So I can get just the doorway if I've got a nice zoom and I get far back. So I get a doorway behind them that's 100 meters behind them. Or if I go close and I've got a wide angle lens, I'm getting all the buildings and trees and things behind them. But the person is still the same size in my frame. So that's the same calculation we're doing here when we're doing this, this calculation. It just tells us how far away we need to be to get the sun or the moon to be nice and big in relation to whatever our subject is. Okay? If your subject is a tree, you can be closer because the tree is smaller. If your subject is the Ponte or Hillbrow Tower or something that's quite tall, you need to be further away to get the sun to be big because you'll be using quite a powerful zoom lens to get that shot. Okay, how do we calculate this? How do we see what we're actually seeing in our frame? There's a tool for that. So we can go to our little layers button here again, clicking the layers button. Now, we just saw the sun moon tool. This is what we just had here where we can specify the size. We can also look at our field of view. This is FOV, so it's our field of view. And it will give us a little tool to visualize what our camera will be seeing. So we're still shooting from the red, that's Northcliffe. We're shooting towards the Leonardo, that's the black pin. And as I zoom in on the Leonardo, you can see that at the top, I've now got my camera selected right here. I've got a lens, and you can select either a 35mm equivalent if you want to do the crop calculation yourself, or you can say real millimeters. So this is the actual millimeters of the lens, your focal length of the lens, and it will do that calculation based on have you got a smaller sensor or a full frame sensor. It will do that calculation for us. You can select a teleconverter if you're putting one of those on, and you can lock your focal length on the map. So it just shows you what your field of view will be with that lens. Okay, so I've got a 150mm lens on this Panasonic Lumix, which effectively gives me a 300mm focal length on this camera. We can say our focus distance. We can focus in a specific spot. So I can do custom distance and pick how many kilometers I'm going to focus at, or I can just tie it into my black pin distance, which means I'm focusing on the Leonardo and I can see what's going to happen. So I'm focusing on the Leonardo right now. That's the distance. I'm happy with that. So my focus is locked right now on the Leonardo distance. I could do portrait or landscape orientation if I wanted to, because that changes your frame. Let's do a portrait shot. Leonardo makes sense in portrait, I think. And then which direction are we facing? I can click on that, and I can click align with black pin. What do we see now? This is quite handy, isn't it? So that's our field of view. From this white line to this white line is what's going to be in our shot. Okay. So I'm going to get quite a bit of Sandton skyline in this photo if I'm using this lens. Let's up my focal length to something a bit longer just to see what framing I get. So let's say I'm putting a 200mm lens on this same camera. You see now the field of view of what my camera can see is narrowed down. Okay. I'm seeing less of the skyline, so I can look at the Leonardo there. So if my Leonardo is straight in the middle of my frame, I'm getting that much skyline. If I pretty much only want the Leonardo, I might need to go to, let's say, let's try a 500mm and see what that looks like. That's getting closer. So if I zoom in here, can you see we'll only be getting the Leonardo and a tiny little bit on the two sides. And as we move our timeline, I'm going to slowly move my timeline. Now the sun is starting to get into my shot, and right there I'm getting the sun and the Leonardo inside my photo. Okay, so my framing is going to, I can move my framing around. That's pretty much what we're looking at here. We're trying to see how much of the Sandton skyline we're going to see. So we can narrow it down to just the Leonardo. We need a 500mm lens on this camera, or we can open it up, get a bit more skyline, and then we can use a different lens. So this is a nice way of seeing what lens to pack for a specific shot. Okay, and this size of the sun from this edge of the yellow to that edge of the yellow is going to be our apparent size of the sun, which we can read off here. The size of the sun is going to be 88 meters. So as I move my timeline in the bottom, you can see it covers more than the Leonardo. So it's going to be wider than what the Leonardo is going to be wide. The Leonardo is smaller than the sun in width. Okay, so we can read the size off here, 88 meters. And the sun height, so the apparent height above the Leonardo where the sun is going to be, 681 meters. That's roughly double as high as the Leonardo. So our shot will be, when we align the sun, there will be another Leonardo gap and the sun will be at the top. Okay, so we knew this. If we go a little bit earlier, the sun's going to move lower and to the side of the Leonardo. We can see it happening here. Okay, so that's how we can plan this shot just based on PhotoPills. Like I said, it gets a little bit technical, but it gives us a good idea of what we can expect, what to pack, what time to be there, all these things. And I can read the time off the bottom. So as I move my sun, if I move my sun to be right above the Leonardo, we know we need to be there 11 minutes past 7. That's when the sun is going to be right above the Leonardo. Okay. And also on these satellite images, you need to be looking at the base of the building. So if it's a tower or a building, you're looking at the base, the bottom part of the building, not the top part. So right over here, you can see on the map, this is the top of the Leonardo, but the satellite was at a slight angle. So where the Leonardo actually is right here. So the middle of the Leonardo is where the black pin is. It's not up here. Just when you're putting the pins down, just notice that. Okay. Or when you're aligning the moon or the sun, you're looking at the base of the building, not at the top of the building. Okay, good. What else can we do? Well, we can ask, one more, sorry, there's one more tool under our layers. There's a depth of field tool. So that just gives us an idea of what settings to use on our camera very quickly. It's not that important, but you might want to know this. If I go to depth of field tool, here at the top, we've got our Lumix camera, we've got our 500mm lens. I can set my aperture. Let's say I'm shooting at f8. Done. My subject is where the black pin is. It's the Leonardo from Northcliffe. It's at 9.6 kilometers. So we just set, you can pick it here, either custom distance or your black pin distance. That's where I'm focusing. So if I'm focusing at the black pin on the Leonardo, our orientation is still portrait. We're facing the black pin, so our camera is shooting straight towards the Leonardo. What you will see is, if I zoom out a bit, right here, you'll see our hyperfocal distance is that little tree. So everything from that little tree will be in focus to infinity in this case. Okay, we can also swap it around. So where this little subject markers, we can ask it to focus on our hyperfocal distance, which means we're now focusing right here, 2 kilometers away, and everything from 2 kilometers to infinity, which means our sun or our moon or whatever, will be in crisp focus. So we know we're good. To be safe, what we can do, if we want to get the focus in a spot that we can predict, we can just tell it to focus on the black pin, which means the Leonardo. Now we know the Leonardo is in focus. Everything up to 2 kilometers from us is in focus, and it's going to be all the way. There's nothing that's not going to be in focus. That's our hyperfocal distance. Okay, so we know the sun, the moon, everything will be good. That's just another little tool if you want to plan your settings on your camera ahead of the shoot. I generally don't go into such small detail. I just want to know the alignment and if it's possible, and I'll figure out the settings when I'm there usually. But you might want to know this and where to focus. Because if you're focusing on the Leonardo and you've got the moon behind, you need to know that they're both in focus, not just the Leonardo. You don't want a blurry moon in the back. Okay. Then lastly, what I want to show you is, let's just go back. So I'm going to switch these tools off. Again, under this layers thing, you can go to none to switch these tools off. Lastly, you probably want to save this plan. So once you've planned it, you know what you want to do, what dates you want to do, you can save it under save, go to plan, you give it a name, and it will save it for that date and place. Save all your calculations. And you can recall that plan, and you can plan other outings, do whatever you need. And then there's one more thing. If things don't align, if you're trying to align the moon with a specific tree in the local park or with a specific building or something, if stuff's not aligning today or tomorrow, you might want to ask PhotoPills to calculate a date somewhere in the future, in the next 6 months or a year, when these things are actually aligning. So how do we do that? We just go to this little find button here. Let's say we want the sun to align with the Leonardo, be right on top of it. We can go sun at azimuth and elevation. Azimuth is just the direction, so like a compass turning around. The sun has to be in the direction of the Leonardo, and also the elevation, the height that we are specifying. Okay, you can do the same with the moon. You can do the moon direction with the height, and you know the moon is in the exact spot that you want it. So we can ask it, is it possible to get this shot? Go to sun, azimuth, and elevation. We can put a date range in, so we can say, well, 1 year. When's this going to happen in the next year? Is it going to happen again? We've got it today or tomorrow. Is it going to happen in the future? Can I go back and get this shot? Okay, so it's going to look for dates in the next year or whatever time frame I give it. See if this aligns. Then the azimuth, so this is direction. We click on this. We click on numeric, and it will just give us the direction, which right now is the black pin. So it will just give us the direction of the Leonardo from Northcliffe, like we've been planning. The error, how many degrees can it move around? So we're happy with anything within a degree. So a degree either side of this is our error of the exact position. So we're happy. It can move a little bit left or right. We'll be happy with that. Okay, and we can make a larger error, so we get more dates, or we can narrow this error down so there's might be only 1 or 2 dates it happens, or it might never happen to be in that exact spot. Okay, so that's where we do the direction. Then we click on elevation. At elevation, it gives us a little picture, and it's showing right now it's shooting from Northcliffe, where we are on the red, to the black pin, but it's on the base of the Leonardo. We actually want the sun to be above the Leonardo or near the top of the Leonardo, not on the bottom of it. We won't be able to see it. Okay, so we need to either drag this up a little bit to maybe about 300 meters or so, 400 meters, to get it to the top of the Leonardo, or we can go to numeric and just input a height here. So we might want it at 400 meters. If we know the Leonardo is 380 meters, we put 400 meters in and it's right at the top. Okay. Then once we've input the date range, the direction, and the height, we can go to the search button in the top corner. Let me show you that again. So the search button is right here. We just click on the search button, and then it will give us dates in the future where all those conditions are met. And then we can pick on one of those dates and save it and plan our shoot based on that. If it's getting a full moon right behind a tree somewhere in a park, you plan it out. It might tell you there's 3 chances this year when that aligns perfectly, and you can plan your shoot from there. If I click on any of these dates, it's going to shift the date to that day, and I can save that plan as I would any other one. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. It is a bit of a technical tool, but once you get used to the way it works, there's only a couple of things you need to know, and you can repeat the process, and plan all your photo shoots. And also you can see if something's even possible. Some alignments just never happens. You can't get the sun in a specific spot ever, and you need to then move where you're going to be taking the photo from to a different spot to get the correct alignment with your subject, whether it's a tower or a building or a tree or whatever you're going to use as your subject. Okay, I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a quick overview of the most used tools in PhotoPills. Like I said, there's many things you can use for star trails and astrophotography as well. If somebody's interested in that, we can do that a different day. But we are at the end of our time, and I hope this is a quick introduction of what's possible. And again, with PhotoPills, you can just start looking at things like when is blue hour, when is golden hour, what time is sunset, what time is sunrise, what direction is the sunset, what direction is the sunrise. These things are a good place to start, and then slowly you can go into these sort of tools for planning shoots in detail, size of the sun in relation to your subject, distances away, field of view. These things are more technical, but as you get more familiar, you can start adding these things. And then just one last thing to mention, right at the bottom, I can't do it with my iPad right now on my desk, but this little button says AR, and it is augmented reality. So if you press that, you can hold your phone up. It will give you a camera view and overlay the sun and the moon, and if you go for night view, it will overlay like the Milky Way and stars and everything on top of the view, so you can see where the sunset, sunrise is, and you can move your phone around and see where you need to stand to get that sun in a specific spot, maybe for a sunset. So if you get to a place where you're going to be taking photos, you can just press that AR view. You can turn around and see, oh, the sunset's going to be right there, I need to move this way. Oh, it's going to be right there, I need to move this way. It's a very handy tool. It's one of the easiest to use also if you're in the spot you're going to be taking the photos from. This little AR tool right here, you just click on AR. That will give you sunrise, sunset, those things, and the night one will give you the star information. Okay, very handy app, but it does take a little bit of spending time with it to figure out all the things. And there's plenty more tools as we go back to the polls. You can see there's a lot of other tools built in, a lot of them for night photography, star trails, a lot of other things you can use. There's hyperfocal tables, depth of field tables, and some nice calculations and calculators built into the tool. We might cover some of these at a later stage, but at least for a sunset or a sunrise or a moonset or a moonrise photo, you should be able to plan those now. Good. Thank you for joining. There's no other questions popping up in the next few seconds. We'll call it a night. and I will see you next week. Just give it a few seconds for questions. Yeah, I agree. Lots of info. Very good app. It's a super app. You just need to get used to the actual way it works, and use it a lot. Like the more you use it, the more you'll get used to actually using all these tools, moving the map around. It is a little bit tricky, but go back to the video, rewind it, pause it, use it on your phone. Just follow along with this one we planned, and you'll see how all the tools work. Good. The video will be available after, so just rewind and have a look and plan your next photo shoot. Maybe as a first one, try the same one we did, and then try your own one after that. Good, good. There's no questions. We're going to call it tonight. Thank you for joining as ever. I appreciate it. It's nice spending time with you guys. Then I'll see you next week.